Welcome to a new season of Fearless and Free podcast, where we take a holistic spirit, soul, body approach to healing and wholeness. I'm your host, Dana Grindal, prayer minister and founder of Whitestone Ministries International. You have found a safe place to connect with the body of Christ, where we challenge Christians to experience the abundant life of Christ, fearless and free. Today, we have my good friend with us, Elizabeth Stewart. She is a wife. She's a mother of three. She's a corporate CFO by training. But most importantly for our conversation today, she is a living miracle. Her story is too important not to share, how she is daily taking territory in unexpected ways. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Of course. So I just want you all to know Elizabeth is a very special friend. We've been friends a long time. I didn't actually take time to count out the years. You're probably
22.
22 years we've been friends.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. You're the math person. Thank you for doing that. Yes. Numbers are not my first thought. So, yes, 22 years we've been friends. And I met Elizabeth. I'm going to let her tell her version, but I met Elizabeth at church through a mutual friend, I think a referral. Anyway, she came to the church that I was attending at the time and joined our women's Bible study group. And we connected from there. And I don't know if any of you listening can relate, but sometimes you meet someone and even though you've known each other a short amount of time, like right away you feel a connection. Right away you feel this like, we're friends, like we're connected. And I
Yes.
felt that with her. I don't know. Do you want to tell your side of that?
My side of that is very similar to you, where I was new to the Houston area and I needed to connect with something because I didn't know anybody in Houston and I felt very alone. And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, which was new to me. And they said, come to this Bible study and Dana Grindal will be your leader. And you came up and sat next to me, and that was it for me. I mean, I was like, I felt like I had known you forever, and it was a very easy and very fun friendship from the start. I mean, it was instant connection, and it's amazing how the Lord put you in my life that fast because I was not necessarily drowning, but I was very lonely and very depressed at the time and getting back into Bible study as well as having a leader I could connect with was pretty amazing. So that's what
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. I just remember, yeah, absolutely. It was very quick that we were friends and we both had young kids. How many kids did you have at that point?
I only had Mary Catherine at the time.
Okay. And how old was
So
she? Do you remember?
9.
9.
9.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Young, but not a baby.
Not a baby, but yeah,
Yeah.
very much. Yeah.
Yeah. We were young moms. I had 3
Yes.
at that point. So yeah, Christian would have been a little bit older than that. And then Cammie and Colton. So yeah, we
Yes.
were busy moms trying to do the mom thing, trying to, have connection, trying to make friends, trying to, serve the Lord, trying to, be wives and moms and all the things that come with running a household. It was a very busy season.
Well, John and I had just been married a couple months prior too. So I had left everything, the ultimate leave and cleave, and moved to Houston and I was just completely in isolation and it was wonderful to meet you that way.
Yeah.
So, because I was in a whole new territory.
That's
So,
right. It was a new territory, totally
hmm
new city, new connections, new friendships, new
hmm
everything. Absolutely. Yeah. I can relate a lot to that. So, what was life like? We're describing you're in a new place, you're getting connected. I mean, we were doing life together for a while. We even ended up I was living out on the north side of town, and you ended up moving later, I think, out to that part of town. Is that, you remember?
we did a detour first. John was working contract and we couldn't find full-time employment that he liked in the area and got a call from a company in Oregon and we instantly jumped on it because we thought, why not do the adventure while Mary Catherine was young? We didn't have any other children. And we thought, sounds like a good time. And we thought, let's go to Oregon. So we hopped on the plane literally 5 days later, sold our house the next week, and moved to Oregon. And the minute we got to Oregon, we found out that we were pregnant with Michaela.
Mm.
So had we known we were pregnant with Michaela, I don't think we would have moved because all of our family was in Texas. But the Lord apparently wanted us to not be in Texas because the transition from going from Texas to Oregon was so simple. And they moved us. We didn't have to, they just took care of everything. And it was a wonderful time up there.
Mm.
So in Oregon, we had sweet Michaela. And that's where our life began to unravel.
Mm.
We had this great, instant, wonderful family that now was plagued with a horrific pregnancy. I had surgery when I was pregnant with her. I was on bed rest till the minute she was born. And then we had this precious baby, and then she was sick the minute she was born, and nobody knew why.
Mm.
So that's how our story started, was, this great, perfect little story to all of a sudden we have all these complications at one time. The company that John was working with decided they wanted to move everybody back. And sadly, there was an issue with his own personal work, and he lost his job. And so we were in the middle of packing up and moving back to Texas, trusting that the Lord would have a new position for us. And on Valentine's Day, Michaela coded in Mary Catherine's arms.
Mm.
And that's where we really saw the Lord working in ways that we did not understand yet. The paramedics resuscitated her, took her to the children's hospital. We went time and time again trying to figure out what was wrong with this child, and nobody could diagnose her in Oregon. I flew back with 3 suitcases and 2 girls on a plane to my parents' home, back to Texas, still unsure what was wrong with Michaela. We went to Medical City in Dallas. A doctor did one test, saw that her body was filling up her lung cavity with all the fluid that she was ingesting, and she's an infant at the time, and went into immediate surgery. He didn't even let us leave the doctor's appointment. He checked us into the hospital. When this happened, John was already now working in Tulsa, Oklahoma for another company, and this was his first week of work. I mean, we just boom, 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 boom. So we're at this other company. I'm in the hospital. They were gracious, let him take time off. We had this emergency surgery. It was Mother's Day weekend. And Michaela had a feeding tube placed and some other issues within her stomach area, but they still didn't know what was wrong with her. So we, as a family, after the surgery, moved back to Tulsa. So now I have 2 girls, a child on a constant feeding tube drip with IV poles. The whole world just changed overnight to this, go and blow, have a great time, to we had to schedule everything out, a child that's crying 24 hours a day, just the frustration, preteen not understanding why mom and dad are not available. And it just became a very stressful situation. During this time, I also wrote a letter to the Mayo Clinic and begged them to take Michaela on as a patient. Thankfully, we had my great grandfather was a physician there for 40 years in the endocrinology department. Part of that helped getting in quickly, but
Mm-hmm.
part of it was the letter. I made sure that I was extremely explicit on, we have all these problems and not one doctor can figure out what is wrong with this child. And she was a failure to thrive. She was not gaining weight. She was at 13 months the size of a 3-month-old. And I just was praying to the Lord, please, please give us, answers. What is wrong with our child? So we took more time off and drove up to, well, actually flew up the first time to the Mayo Clinic. And we were there for 4 weeks in a hotel, going to every specialty clinic there was, and nobody at the Mayo Clinic could figure out what was wrong. The very last day that we were there, a neurologist, not even endocrinology, a neurologist said, let's take this one test. Granted, it's 3 to 7 degrees below zero without the wind chill because
Mm.
we're there in January.
Wow.
And John had to every 4 hours go in the freezing rain and the snow and the cold with a specimen from Michaela for 24 hours. And he just faithfully did it. And we had to stay up with her and work with this medication and then give them samples of the different things going on in her body. And they said, okay, we think we know what it is. Please delay your flight for 2 more days. And so we did. And in the middle of that, we had a roundtable of doctors who were trying to figure out what was going on. We were in the hotel room praying and asking, Lord, what is wrong with our child? Please heal her. We couldn't handle it anymore. We were just crying. We were exhausted. Mary
Mm.
Catherine wasn't near us at the time. I wanted to go home. And they found out that Michaela had an extremely rare metabolic disorder, which is called ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. So what was happening was she was having hyperammonia attacks. Her body couldn't process protein, and they had put her on a high protein food to make her stronger. And they told us it was essentially like giving her rat poison for a year.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we felt like we were killing our child. We didn't know. We just thought, what in the world is going on? And then they said, for a boy, if they don't get a liver transplant at birth, then it's a death sentence. They said, please don't have any more children. And we had found out the week before we were pregnant.
Mm.
And then they said, well, we'd like you to consider terminating the pregnancy. And we said, no, I'm not going to terminate the pregnancy. If he passes, then he passes. But I'm going to trust the Lord. We cannot, no, we're not going to do it. And we fought the medical team over and over again. They said, you don't know what you're doing. And we said, yes, we do. And John was as firm as I was that we were not going to terminate the pregnancy. And we were just going to deal with whatever came.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back to Tulsa, back reunited as a family. Michaela was getting the therapies she needed, was starting to get stronger, was rolling over. And they warned us that she wouldn't walk, probably wouldn't talk much, probably would never go to school. I mean, and we said, that's fine. We'll deal with whatever comes. That is just fine. During my pregnancy with Miles, I got extremely sick again, and I was in the hospital, and my blood pressure even went down to 50 over 30 one day, and I was in the hospital, and nurses came running in and were literally slapping me around in the bed, and I kept saying, "What are you doing?" They said, "Ma'am, wake up, wake up." And I didn't understand, but what they were trying to do was make me fight to get my blood pressure up, to get my heart rate up. And essentially what was happening, we found out, was that he was stealing all the sugar in my body.
Mm.
And so my body was reacting negatively. So essentially, he was growing and I was dying. It was a very odd situation. Because we now had two possible children with this rare disorder, and the medical team in Tulsa just couldn't handle when we kept having to come to Houston, we decided maybe it was time to go back to Houston. So that's how we did the full circle back.
Mm.
So I was 8 months pregnant when we moved back with Miles.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, there was a company in Houston that really wanted John months prior. And I remember making a phone call to you and saying, are they still interested?
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, they were.
Yeah.
And so, literally a week later, we checked me out of the hospital. I went straight from one hospital to another hospital in Houston. 24/7 on an IV bag myself. So we have 2 IV poles, one for Michaela, one for me,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved back to Houston, and we lived downtown the med center. When Miles was born, speaking of miracles, here's another one. The surgeon nicked my vascular artery, and I'd have emergency surgery on top of a C-section, and I never got to hold Miles. Miles went straight to Texas Children's I was at St. Luke's, he was at Texas Children's, and I never got to touch him, I never got to hold him. His SATs were so bad, they had to move immediately to the NICU level 3. Because of my surgery, I couldn't go over there for 2 days because I couldn't move, because the positioning from where the vascular surgeon had to do a lot of surgery, and it was traumatic because I can't hold my newborn. I'm not near my daughters now. My husband's in the other facility with our son, and I just sat there and had to pray. I mean,
Yeah.
it was absolutely devastating to go through
Mm-hmm.
that much. And then John came over and said, I need to tell you that his ammonia level is sky high.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be prepared in case something goes wrong. I didn't touch this precious little boy yet. And I said, okay. And I fell apart, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 days later, I got wheeled over to go see him, and he was just precious. But he had oxygen, he had a little bubble over his face, and we are watching the saddest stories I can imagine in a level 3 because we were the top tier. I mean, it really would break your heart, the things that you saw in this little NICU. And then Miles just started to perk up, and we did not understand. The doctors did not understand. When he was 9 days old, still in the NICU, his level went to 0. And so the doctors retested and retested and retested. And what that means is that the ammonia levels in his body went from high, high, high to non existent.
Wow.
And we still, I mean, it was the Lord, definitely the Lord, but we as humans are going, no, what changed? Was there a medication? Was there this? What happened? And it was just the Lord took it away. And Miles, to this day, has never had an episode of the genetic disorder. They've tested him. He is fine. And it is the hugest blessing because we were ready. We were completely ready to let him go. Even at 24 weeks, we had family members saying, I think you need to terminate the pregnancy or do an early delivery because I was so ill. And we said no. We just trusted that the Lord was in charge and that he knew the plan, and we never doubted it. And
Mm-hmm.
looking back, it was severely traumatic, but the Lord had us in his hands the whole time. It
Yeah.
was so now we're back in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and we were living in a high rise, and I had 2 infants, and I could not 2 elevators with 2 infants and a kiddo in school. So we decided to live close to you.
Yep.
And so that's how it worked. You showed me a bunch of neighborhoods. We found a great home
Mm-hmm.
and moved right in. And Miles was 7 months old, and that was that for us. It
Yeah.
was amazing. So it was a complete full circle where we're never coming back to Houston, and then we are staying in
And then you're
Houston.
back in
So
Houston.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. So yeah, just I want to pause you in the story there for just a second. And so you and I stayed connected through all of these things that were happening, communicating. But when you came back and moved nearby, of course, we were very much doing life together again. And just for the listeners to not miss, so there's 3 miracles already there. That you survived. Everything that was happening physically to you, and that God had protected you. And then these 2 children that were said they wouldn't survive or wouldn't. One shouldn't have even been born according to the doctors, and yet there he was defying all the odds. Both of these 2 little ones were defying all the statistics, all the doctors, and they were growing, they were developing, they were doing the things that they're supposed to do at their age. And so when we were reconnecting, we're doing life together in that season, and it was busy. I mean, just life in that season with young children at home is busy. Just trying to do meals, just trying to do laundry. We're, doing, just trying to do normal life things, try to go to Bible study, try to, get some cleaning done at the house, or, just lots of things that were happening at that time. Just normal life things, as well as Michaela still had some challenges. She still had the feeding tube, and that was a lot at that time. It still, was a long season of managing her food and being careful what she could eat. And tell the listeners just a little bit briefly about developmentally what, just, because we're looking at your story. Of course, there's so much that I want to unpack, but there's the physical aspects of what was happening, as well as the emotional and spiritual. So, in that dynamic, just give them a picture. It'll give our listeners like what it was like caring for Michaela, as a young child, as a toddler, that early elementary age.
Um, Michaela was by far out of the three the most exhausting because she cried, her body hurt, she wasn't growing because of this. She also had had a stroke when she coded, and because of the stroke, it took out the right side of her body. She had hypotonia, she couldn't walk, she couldn't stand. And so we did aggressive physical therapy, occupational therapy in the home. And in Oklahoma, they would come to the house. In Texas, they wouldn't for some reason. But in Oklahoma, we got phenomenal care. And that in itself was very exhausting physically because your whole world revolved around this child. But then we had another child too who needed our attention, who needed our focus. And a lot of times she got shuffled off because we had to deal with the urgent matter. And having a child with a feeding tube where you're constantly having to feed and constantly giving them medication, John had to work, and John thankfully had a virology degree and understood the background of sciences and knew what they were saying when they would talk to him. I'd say, now give it to me in layman's terms because I don't understand. I'm not a sciences person. I'm an English person. I don't understand science. So he would explain it to me so that I could understand what is happening in her system. But the physical exhaustion of it was awful. Michaela, still, when Miles was born, was not really moving around much. The biggest thing that made her move was Miles. And
Mm.
Miles started crawling to her, pulling her long hair, doing things to antagonize her just because he's a baby. That's what they do. And that's what made her start moving and made her start thinking, maybe I want to do that too. Maybe I want to go play. And he was the best free physical therapy we've ever had because he made her move. He made her Miles walked really, really early. Miles was, enjoying calculators at 12 and 14 months, and writing and reading, and we're going, who are you? I mean, so it was like twins where he was, and the people called them twins. They were the same size. She
Yeah.
was still a little tinier, same size, but they were on the same growth chart together where they did things together. And Miles was the caretaker of Michaela, even though she was 22 months older. He was the one that would get stuff for her. And then watching them together was a lot of fun, but it was also pure exhaustion chasing toddlers around, where one is not really a toddler, but still acting like a toddler. For Michaela, we had to be very, very careful about the feeding tube. He yanked it out a couple of times. We had to rush to emergency rooms to get it put back in. We had a lot of fun, activities trying to keep her safe and secure. And every time we would like even baby proof a fireplace, She ripped the thing off and got a huge stitches on her forehead. I mean, so you couldn't baby proof with Michaela. Kayla was going to figure out a way to get into everything. She was curious now. She really wasn't talking a lot, but she laughed, she smiled, she was engaging and a lot of fun. But all through the night, one of us had to take turns watching her because, if she flipped over, then the machines would go off, or if she did something, because it was a 24/7 constant drip for her body. It wasn't just breakfast, lunch, and dinner for
Yeah.
like normal children. And
Mm-hmm.
that was very hard. The medications, the expense of it, the specialists that we had to see on a constant basis, the blood draws. I felt like I was down in the med center a lot,
Yeah.
and that was hard. It was really, really difficult. I was
Mm-hmm.
just beyond exhausted. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think I had anything left. Miles wasn't even 2 yet, and I just thought, how are we going to get through all the years,
Mm-hmm.
going on? The praise is Michaela graduated high school last year. It was 2 years behind,
Mm.
but she graduated high school. She was 0.03% away from being the top student.
Wow.
She did learn to walk and talk and tell us off and everything else that a teenager does.
Yeah.
And she is a walking miracle. She is one of there's 200 kids that they follow on a constant basis, and she's one of them for the baseline. And then there's 2,000 in the world, and she is one in the study.
Mm.
So she has helped with the research and the development, trying to find a cure for these kids, as well as a better cost-effective solution for the medications they take. Because when you only have 2,000 kids purchasing a certain pharmaceutical need, it's very costly.
Yeah.
So they're trying to bring that cost down. For some people that are listening that understand what PKU is, it's in the same family. It's in the liver, so her body cannot process proteins. So we have
Mm-hmm.
to be very careful how much protein her body ingests. She has to count the protein grams. She knows if it's too much or too little. And to this day, she still has a lot of problems in college. She last semester actually had to come back to Houston for a medical emergency, missed 2 weeks of college. This semester, she's already missed a week. So we're not through the woods yet.
Yeah.
And this will be a lifelong battle that she will have to endure, but she's thriving,
Yeah.
and she is limited in a few things. She still has the weakness, is blind in one eye, but you would never know by looking at her that anything is wrong. She does a fantastic job of not necessarily masking it, but she owns it.
Yeah.
And she just says, "This is me, take it or leave it." And I
Mm-hmm.
love that attitude about her. It's just that she has a real tough inner spirit of, "This is me."
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that about Michaela and Miles. Each of them in their own way are miracles. I want to highlight at this point, well, I just want to highlight here in the story, really honoring and celebrating you as parents, that you guys did not accept the box. You did not accept, well, she'll never do that. So, don't let her do that. She'll never be able to walk or crawl. Somebody might have, put her separate from the other child, not let them interact, and just say, well, she's never going to do that. But you guys gave her the opportunity to see what she could do and to do life. And I'm sure some of that was survival and having two babies and needing them to be able to interact with each other and entertain each other. But I just think it's so powerful to see that you didn't accept the box. You didn't accept what the doctor said that was the only option. this is just how it's going to be, and you just need to accept it. As far as developmentally, what she would be able to do, or who she could actually be, or what kind of life that she could have. And the same for Miles, and not limiting that, and not putting God in a box at that time, and just, letting God be God. And you just said, it's going to be what it's going to be. And just the miracle of how when I see Michaela, I think miracle. I just think how she overcame everything that they said she would never do. So far, she's still doing the things they said she would never do. She still is. She's teaching the doctors. And I just love that. She's teaching them, through her life, and how Miles has been a joy, and a miracle in and of himself. That he did not have this genetic disorder and the same challenges in that same way, and how he's been able to be that playmate, that physical therapist, that encourager, that antagonist that siblings can be, to just push you to say, I can do that too. If you can do it, I can do it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just so powerful in your story and your family. So I want everyone to just not miss the miracle that Michaela is, and that Miles is, and that you know, being present and able to be part of that with all that was going on.
Fearless and Free, Spirit, Soul, and Body with Dana Grindal is brought to you by Melissa Hudson, realtor with BHGRE, Gary Green. Melissa knows that selling or buying a house is one of the most important financial decisions you will make. Her expertise as a former accountant, professional organizer, and mother of 4 brings you valuable insight into the decision-making process. Melissa is committed to providing structure, efficiency, and excellent communication so you have the information needed to make the best decisions that are right for you. After all, this is not just a house, but a home. Contact melissa.hudson@garygreen.com or 281-844-2184. Again, 281-844-2184.
So let's go back a little bit in the story, because I know you shared Michaela's in college now and all these amazing things. But let's go back to where you had moved out. We were doing life together. You're living nearby. We're out in the northwest part of Houston, just doing family life together. And there was a lot of challenges at that season. There were a lot of challenges for you. You mentioned being exhausted, just all the care that was required from Michaela, and then just normal life things. Your husband needed to go to work, and things needed to be taken care of in the house, and you had 2 other children that needed things, and there was a lot going on. And I remember just my heart really just being so burdened, like seeing you spread so thin. And we tried to have people help with things, as the church could do, and the church community could do, or as neighbors could do here and there with things, but just really spread so thin. And then there's this moment I'd really like to just kind of share. There's a moment that I remember distinctively. You had received a diagnosis from the doctor, and I'll let you tell about that. Um, Here's what I want to say in that I remember this moment, and I remember so distinctively. Yeah, I want the listeners to really just connect to this part of the story, that here is this friend, this person that I love and care about, that is spread so thin, doing an amazing job taking care of everyone else, and, keeping them alive and feeding and dressing, and still managing to make it to church and school as they can. And they're being educated. And I was just so amazed at all that she was walking in. And we were praying about a lot of these things. Lord, help with this and help with that and help with this and all the things. And there's this moment that I remember standing in the driveway, and I got a phone call from Elizabeth that said she had been diagnosed with cancer. I'll let her tell that part. But I remember this crisis for me of faith,
Mm-hmm.
because I had Jesus in a box. And I remember telling him in that moment, I was mad. I was really mad at God. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Of all the people that don't need this, are you kidding me right now?
Mm-hmm.
I was mad, and I felt like we had been doing all the things. We're doing all the things. We're praying. We're trusting you. We're doing all these things. And I said to God very specifically, you are going to either have to cure her and heal her instantly. Like, we need this miracle right now that you're going to heal her, or you're going to have to just take her to heaven, because there's no way her physical body can survive this. In my mind, with Jesus in my box, that there was no way that this was survivable for her marriage, for her kids. Like, in that moment, I can still see myself in the driveway yelling at God, the things that you say. I'm like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Like, we need a miracle today. We need a miracle right now. That was a tough time.
It was horrible. I'll take you back through it. How it started, see, Miles was 2 years old, and I knew something was wrong, and I could not get anybody to take me seriously. And they said, well, you've had 2 children, you're just stressed, you're fine. And I said, no, I really need to get in to see somebody and get a mammogram. And they said, oh, no, we've got you in a couple years, you're good, don't worry about it. And because I had real dense tissue, and I'd had some issues earlier on, they said, oh, it's just your body chemistry. You're fine. There's nothing wrong. And I said, no, there's something wrong. And Baylor College of Medicine wouldn't take me seriously. 2 other physicians wouldn't take me seriously. And I actually called you again. And I said, who do I see? And you gave me a name of Dr. Keller. And I went to him, and he said, well, let's go down the hallway to a place and get a mammogram and see what's wrong. And he said, it's probably nothing, but let's just go get it checked out. I said, okay. And this is actually the mammogram and everything was the day before Thanksgiving. I had the bags packed because my daughter was going to Colorado to see some family. And so I'm squeezing all this in before I've got, go back home and put her on a flight. And I did the mammogram and they said, can you please go wait in another room really quick? And I said, okay. So I just sat and waited and thought, well, I'm looking at my watch the whole time thinking, I'm in a hurry. Let's get this going. And the doctor came in and he said, I'd like to do a biopsy right now. And I'm thinking, is this normal? I thought you had to wait a couple days for the results. I had no idea. And right then and there, they did the biopsy. They called Dr. Keller. He came running down the hallway, and it wasn't even in the spot that I thought I had a problem. It was a completely different area, didn't know it was there. And they said, well, we're scheduling surgery on Monday. I said, but you don't have the results yet. And they said, we know what this is, and you need to have surgery on Monday. My mind is, I'm by myself. I'm all alone. I am totally trying to figure out what is going on. I've got, like I've already stated, all these 3 kids with 3 issues. I've got a teenager now. I have 2 small toddler-ish children running around, and then we'd had a bunch of house problems and floodings and everything in the house. I'm already so overwhelmed. Now I've got a house full of company. My husband's family was all in my home. I'm about to prepare a Thanksgiving dinner. I'm about to put their child on a plane. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I have cancer. And I drove home in a fog, didn't know who I was, what was going on. I remember calling you and telling you, I told you first. Actually, I told you before I told John. John didn't even know yet.
Mm.
I told you first. I have a bra full of ice, and now I've got to go through TSA with a 13-year-old or whatever she
Oh my
was
gosh.
on a plane and not tell her why mommy's crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'm just going to miss you. And I used that as because I'm not emotional until I'm an emotional person. It's so very weird. I don't cry unless it's really just too much. I'm pretty stoic until I just can't anymore. So I'm teary-eyed driving to Intercontinental with her. I remember the turn as I'm turning around that curve and thinking, how am I going to get through TSA without falling apart or letting her know? And at the time back then, you could go through TSA with your children and all that good stuff. And I just kept praying, when I go through the scan, please don't say anything to my daughter. And I prayed that before I even got to the agents. Just please, if you see anything odd, just say nothing. And I looked at the TSA agent and I kind of told her, because I said, Mary Catherine, you go first. So she went first. So she didn't even see anything. And I looked at the agent, I said, if you see anything odd, just be quiet. And she was. And I right now remember that very distinctly, how she knew instinctively, something's not right. And they let me go through, and I'm probably one of the very few people in the world that's gone through a bag of ice through
Yeah.
security
Yeah.
in their clothes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they let you through because it's
Yeah.
liquid.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put her on the plane, and she never knew. I didn't tell her till she came home, which to this day she's still mad at me for that, but
Mm.
I didn't want to ruin her trip. I wanted her to have a great time. She was about to have a wonderful time for a week in Colorado. I want her to enjoy it. I drove home, and then I thought, what am I going to do? My world has just changed overnight, just drastically overnight. It's changed. But then I have a house full of company, and I'm supposed to cook dinner. And so I'm in the kitchen chopping up onions and everything else, the trimmings, because I love to cook. And my mother-in-law came in. She said, "What is wrong?" And I said, "I think it's the onions. I think I'm just having a reaction." And I just I was like, I was not going to ruin Thanksgiving for the family. I couldn't do it. So I waited until after Thanksgiving meal to tell everybody that I was going to have surgery on Monday and that I had cancer. And that whole day, it was like a movie. I felt like it just didn't make any sense. I went from highs and lows and everything else. And it was amazing how the Lord helped me keep going. That was the most jam-packed day of things I had to do, but I also had to have this diagnosis right in the smack middle of it. And how am I going to deal with it and try to stay sane at the same time for a multitude of people at one time? And that was very, very hard.
Mm.
I told my family that evening as well, the Thanksgiving night, I told them too. But I just didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want it to be a, oh no, poor Elizabeth moment either. I didn't want any, I was trying to deflect any attention
Mm-hmm.
of cancer away. I didn't want to deal with it. This is not what it was about. We were going to have a great time. We were going to enjoy each other. But I was so mad at God. I was really mad. And I think I used a lot of my anger out on those onions and everything else I was chopping up because you don't know what else to do. I mean, I wanted to scream myself, going, what, how? How am I going to handle this on top of everything else we've got going on?
Mm-hmm.
John is at a new company. John is trying to work really hard. John is hired himself. We were overloaded. I didn't understand why we had one more thing on our plate
Mm-hmm.
to have to contend with
Mm-hmm.
in this world. It really was very difficult, and I'm very glad that my oldest was gone because I had more time to process. I didn't have to fake it with her because she's very instinctive on if something's wrong with mom. I gave me time to think. And the other two were, young enough where they don't remember any of this. So they
Yeah.
didn't, they just did their thing. But emotionally, I was wrecked. I was just
Mm-hmm.
wrecked thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to these kids? I had the surgery. They did a lumpectomy first, and then the margins weren't clear. And so they said we needed to a mastectomy, but you need chemo and radiation. And so we decided to do those first, according to what MD Anderson had told us to do. While I was doing chemotherapy, my body would crash over and over again. And I'd be in the hospital for 30 days, 20 days, so then I'm gone again from my family.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the times that I was in the middle of doing chemotherapy, I got a heart infection and I got endocarditis. And during that, something was wrong with my mitral valve. Well, they told me I could go home. This is another Lord miracle. I'm packing up to leave, and the cardiologist runs. I've never seen a cardiologist of that size run and chase me down and say, "Get back in bed. Don't move." And I said, "What is wrong?" He said, "If you move, your mitral valve could pop." And he said, "You need to get back in bed." And I said, I had no idea. And so I was in the hospital for another 30 or whatever days. And then I had to leave with these massive antibiotic balls for 6 weeks, where John came home faithfully every day, changed it out to put a new one on, and went back to work. I mean,
Yeah.
he was incredible how many times he didn't even question it. He just did it. He
Yeah.
just did it. It was
That's amazing.
amazing.
Let's pause right there just to clarify for the listeners. So, if you're not familiar with Houston, we have world-class medical care, and MD Anderson is the world-class cancer center. So, you had been diagnosed with this cancer, and what did they tell you? I think it's important to the story. What did they tell you about the cancer and about the treatment that you would have to have? If you don't have this, you're not going to survive.
They were very specific that if I didn't go through, I had to go through 4 different chemotherapy types. 3 were in one bag and then one was by itself. So I did 12 rounds of one chemotherapy, and then I had to do, I know I went through 38 rounds of chemotherapy, different types. And I had to do this one, it was called the Red Devil. And just to clear it out, because since I was adopted, I didn't have any medical history. We couldn't figure out where the cancer came from. We had to attack my body pretty viciously just to cure it of the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The sad part was that I didn't get to finish the chemotherapy treatments because my body became so weak, and it was just destroying me physically, to where the chemotherapy oncologist just said, "We're done. We cannot do any more." I'd had so many blood transfusions. There was one time during the endocarditis issue where they told John that she might not make it through the night. And I remember vaguely feeling kind of an ethereal. I always had me on like a morphine pump or something in the hospital. So I was goofy, just goofy. But I remember thinking, am I dying? I mean, I felt like, is this it? I mean, I haven't said goodbye to my kiddos. I haven't done anything. I mean, John would even bring the kids to the hospital to come see me every night. Miles would always be dressed up in a really cute sweater the nurses always had a banana for him every time he walked in the door. I mean, it was a routine because we were there so much. The nurses knew the kids. We knew the nurses. I knew which ones were the good ones. I knew which ones were the ones to avoid or to not make mad. I mean, we were there way too much. But the doctors said if you don't do the chemotherapy and the radiation, you're not going to make it. So when chemotherapy ended and we couldn't continue, we went on to radiation. I was not prepared for it. The physical pain, the trauma, the amount of radiation they had to do literally melted the layers of my skin to the point where I was down to like one layer and it was just raw. And so I've got a child that I'm feed tubing still at home. I have a toddler, I have a teenager, and now I have me with other complications from the cancer. And it was exhausting. I don't even know how we even made through that period of time. It was just waking up in the morning was a victory.
Yeah.
While I was at MD Anderson, I was in a bunch of different support groups, and a lot of people in my groups passed away, and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have that survivor guilt of why am I still here? And they have little children too, and they're gone.
Yeah.
because you really get to know people very well in these groups. And there was even a person in our Sunday school that passed and I thought I was the one that was going to pass because mine was so intense
Yeah.
and so fast growing that I thought I was supposed to be the one who was supposed to die first.
Yeah.
And she passed, and that it was very traumatic because our children went to the same school at the time, and I felt for the family because I'm still alive and she's gone. And that was really rough. After radiation ended, we did the double mastectomy, and they did it probably too soon because my body fell apart when they tried to go and put the implants in. The implants immediately became infected. They had to go back in for another surgery and
Mm.
pull those out too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was on medication again because now I got a blood fungal infection from it.
Mm.
And then they said, well, now we have another problem. So we had problem after problem after problem. And the other problem was there were so many people at the time. MD Anderson was doing a transition to UT Health Sciences, as well as they had just bought it, and they had started an indigent care program. And this is not to dissuade anybody from going to MD Anderson. This was just my experience at the time, where the nurses would take me to the emergency room and there would be no spots available. And then I had one nurse start bawling, and she said she needs to be seen right now. And they said she'll be seen tomorrow morning at like 4 in the morning. This is at 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, no, she needs to be seen now. And they said, we don't have any beds. And I was in a hallway just shaking. And so John took me AMA against medical advice to St. Luke's Hospital. And that is where we met another oncologist who ended up taking over my case. And then Dr. Keller and his group at North Cypress Medical Center took over the radiation part of it. And they saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
MD Anderson did the best they could, but they were overwhelmed at the time. And that transition, I just came at the wrong time. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
everybody's outcomes are different,
Yeah.
but the oncologist that I met at North Cypress was very aggressive with his radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some experimental radiation. That was probably one of the most painful things I've gone through in my entire life because it was a surgery.
Yeah. I remember.
And it was awful. And I really didn't think I'd make it through the night every night. And it was for 5 nights. And thankfully, the Lord saw me through it and I got to go home.
Yeah. I like to share here? I think it's important. I think maybe listeners, you're catching this in the story and the way Elizabeth and John do life, but they advocate for one another. And I think that's something really important to hear in her story is that, yes, medical care, treatment plans, all those things are important and processes. But at the end of the day, you have to know your body, you have to know your family, you have to know what you can handle. And for them driving downtown, in the middle of the night, waiting long periods of time, they had young children, it was not doable. It was just not sustainable. And so them making those choices and her husband be willing to make that choice, certainly there was a lot of prayer going on. I know I was praying, our Sunday school class, she was on the church list. I think you were on every church list for miles. you
I
were
felt it. I
you
felt it.
were. I know you were on your parents' church list, and you were on lists in lots of churches in other states, that people were praying for you. And I do feel, that that does make a difference in the moment when you have to make those hard decisions, when people are praying. And John was willing to do hard things. And, that is another aspect that both of you did made the hard choice to do what was needed to care for yourself, to care for your children, it was making changes. Sometimes we do have to advocate. Sometimes we do need to switch doctors or programs or something that is doable because it's an overall quality of life that has to be balanced. So I've always respected and honored that and really learned that from you. In my book that I wrote, Healing from the Heart, in the chapter at the end about being your own advocate, I talk about
Yes.
that. And I learned that from watching you. I applied it in my story, but I learned that from watching you, that if this doctor or that nurse wasn't able to help, we're going to find someone else. And you never gave up. And I do really want to take a moment just to honor that about you and your story, and to encourage people listening. Like, doctors have so much to offer and we should listen, but then you take that to prayer and you ask the Lord, how do we respond? And sometimes you have to do something different than what the plan or program is, because that's what's right for you or your family in that season. And your whole story really is about that, in not accepting boxes, not accepting the limitations that are put in front of you, but okay, how can we respond to this? How can we do this?
That is very true. One thing my grandmother said, she was 97 at the time, she said, Elizabeth, when you ever get mad or you are thinking about your circumstances, just remember your husband stayed. And she said, do you know the statistics? Because she grew up at the Mayo Clinic. Her dad was a physician there. She said, how many families fall apart because of health crises, because of kids, because of whatever? And she said, and you had just bam, 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 over and over and over. And she said, it is a testament that you two have stayed together. And she said, I want to remind you over and over, when you two get frustrated, you two stayed the course and how important that is. And I hadn't really thought about it, but she had been watching. She had really been watching from the sidelines. She was never very involved with us personally, but she was watching. And I remember that line very, very well,
Mm-hmm.
when my mom reminded me that, y'all stayed together.
Yeah.
And that is very important, because when things fall apart, that's the first thing you want to do is just run,
Mm-hmm.
and John could have happily just run. I mean, all these things, and he did not. He
Mm-hmm.
ran toward the light and toward the fire, not
Mm-hmm.
away from the fire. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another thing that I've observed about you is that you are someone who does what you can do. And by that, I mean, like, you didn't just give up. You didn't just back off. You didn't
Mm,
just, again, we're talking about, you didn't accept the box or the limitations. You said, what can I do? You both learned, if anyone needs pharmaceutical advice about different types of drugs, these two know them all. They know the generic versions. Like, you learned. I mean, I have a pre-med background, nothing compared to what John has for sure, but you guys learned the medicines. You know the difference between the generic and the not. Like, when I say you learned to advocate for yourselves, you learned. You learned the terminology. I'm sure you've already picked up in this conversation today. Elizabeth knows all the medical terminology and exactly procedures, things that happen. She knows about medicine. She knows about, food and processing. I mean, you guys learned. You took that on. You didn't ever stop advocating, and you haven't stopped learning about what is most helpful for you, or what is working for you, or what your body needs. And this isn't working. And you're very good about communicating, that's not working. We need to do something different. You do that for yourself. Have done that with your kids, your family. And that's a really important aspect of, spiritually, we talk about being present and not withdrawing from life. It'd be easy to withdraw. Like you said, you want to run, you want to hide, you just want to. I can think of my own life at times, nothing like what you're describing, but just want to get in bed and put the covers over your head. Be like, you know, just, this is hard. I don't want to do this. So to keep moving forward, to just keep taking the step that's in front of you, or sometimes
mhm,
just to stand where you are. If you can't take a step, to just stand. That is so important from a spiritual aspect as well as emotional aspect of healing, of staying present, staying there, fighting what you need to fight, fighting the right battles, asking the Lord for help, but even from your own spirit, being able to say, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And you have lived that. you have lived that out, that you could still cook the Thanksgiving dinner. So you did that. You could still, help your kids. You could still help them with homework. You could still help them with so many other things. And you did those things. You do crafts, you do all kinds of things. There are different times that you've been making things that you could make beautiful. I want everyone to know, like, the sewing that she did, that she was selling for a couple years to help, stunning. Like, you couldn't find anything better in a boutique. Just really, really talented. But she just using what she had, what was in her hands, what she could do. And it gave her joy, gave her beautiful things to make. And then she could sell those, at Christmas or Valentine's or things, and it would help for their family. It helped with the medical bills. It helped with connection. It was a fun reason to come visit Elizabeth because she's got these great crafts that she's selling, or, she's having an open house or whatever it was. And it was a way of connecting community to her in some seasons. I remember when you couldn't come to church or couldn't come out. And I think there's so much more in your story that I'd like to unpack as far as the journey. I'd love to have you come back on and we'll tell the rest of that. But for today, I really want to just encourage people in this space. There's so many people that are walking in hard things. I mean, the pain and the suffering is real. And I thank you for not minimizing that. I mean, you've given a picture of how hard it was. I'm sure there's a lot more detail you could go into of how hard it was and how painful it was. And we don't want to minimize that. That's a really important aspect in the humanness of our journey and connecting to people heart to heart, is giving them a space to talk about how hard it is. And that's not always, popular to hear about. People love to hear oh, it's all gone and I feel better, kind of story. But it's just as important to hear the realness of what people are walking through and meet them in that. So I encourage you all, if you're someone that is in a hard place, ask the Lord, who are those trusted people? It's not everyone, but there are some trusted people around you. Ask him who it is that you can confide in, that you can process. Can we just talk and pray? And where you can be really honest with what you're feeling. That's so important. As well as I encourage listeners, if you know someone that is in a hard season, that is in a healing journey or a life journey that's chronic, that it's not a quick fix. It's not 30 treatment plans and you're done and you're cured forever. Like, it's a journey. Ask the Lord how you might be a part of that, and just walking with someone that is in that space. It's so important. We all need friendship. We all need a place to pray and be supported and encouraged, and for our kids to be seen, and just all of those things that are important for life. So I really encourage everyone in that, whichever side or space you may be experiencing that in your life or family. As we close here, and there's so much more to tell, so I can't wait to have you back. There's so much more to tell. She's giving thumbs
Much
up.
more, much more.
So
Yeah,
much.
this is just part one.
It's part one. It's I hope you're encouraged with the miracles, and I love the way that you didn't fit in the box, that you didn't put Jesus in a box, that you just kept inviting him to show up and do what he was going to do in these different spaces. I know if I've said some advice, is there anything that comes to your mind that you would want to tell someone that is in a journey that you have been in, either with a child that has a chronic illness or condition, or to a parent, to a woman who is walking through what you have? What would you tell them?
Wrap up this segment, I would say the most important piece of advice I'd give is let them talk if it makes you feel uncomfortable. A lot of times we don't want to hear the uncomfortable, oh, I am miserable. I am doing bad. You think you need to be there to make them feel like it's okay, or we have all these pat answers of, oh, well, the Lord will see you through it, or, oh, the Lord has got you. Well, you could say, you know what? I am so sorry you're walking through that. May I pray for you? But when people minimize the hurt or the pain somebody's feeling, that doesn't help the person that's going through the trauma or the pain. They need to hear that they're heard, that, I'm having the worst day ever. It's just saying, oh, but you look so great. Or, oh my gosh, your makeup is wonderful. Just say, I hear you. And That was one thing we had a problem with because externally I would be smiling, I'd be happy, I could wear makeup at the time, I wasn't allergic to it. And so I looked put together, but inside I was just a ball of mush. I was falling apart. So my biggest take to anybody that's going through, especially children, illnesses and would be to just let them speak and don't talk over them and say, "Oh, but you look so great," or "Oh, but you have such a great attitude." Just let them be raw and real and let them give you their prayer request or let them give you what's on their heart instead of you thinking you've got to fix them. Don't fix them. They don't want to be fixed. They want to be heard. And I think that's really important.
It is very
So,
important. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah. Anything other than I hear you and that it must just be so hard. Yeah. You miss the person's heart. You're missing their heart. And everyone needs that. Everyone
mhm.
needs that. Thank you. That's so powerful and important and relevant for all of us. So thank you for sharing that. Just this last bit as we're finishing, you're writing a book. We have told Elizabeth, anyone that knows her, we've been saying for years, you have to write this down. You have to write these things down. There are so many miracles. There's so many boxes that you didn't fit in so many times that it's been said this will never happen, or if you don't do this, that won't happen. And then you defied it. You rose above it. Your family has risen above again and again. And so, yeah, is there anything you want to share about the book or just that process?
The process is I'm working on a book that I'm going to take it into segments. It'll be chronological, but the segments will be based upon different journeys that we've gone through. We've hit a lot of stress points, as I've already highlighted a couple of them, and it's going to be my story as well as a biblical perspective. So it's going to be nonfiction. I thought about writing it in a fiction format, but then I decided I'd rather do it in nonfiction, where each chapter will be a different topic, and I'm hoping to have verses but then also just a biblical synopsis as well, talking about a lot of different topics that have just been things I think are sometimes overlooked because we all see things or try to see it through rose-colored glasses instead of just taking those glasses off and seeing, that really my life is messy, and I
Mm,
want it to be a book where it's okay to talk about the messy stuff in life.
yeah,
So that's kind of how I'm taking it.
I love that. I love that. I think it's very
Not a
needed.
self-help book. Not a self-help book.
No,
Nope. Don't do that. Don't do
no,
that.
no. I think you take a very raw and intelligent and biblically sound approach to suffering, to pain, to humanness, to relationships, to health,
Mhm.
family relationships, all of that. So you have so much wisdom. I'm so eager to see that. And been telling her for like years, you have to be write it down. So at least she has been keeping a
I
diary.
have. Mhm.
She's been keeping a diary. So she's got it, got a lot of it on paper, and her story is still being written. God, we thank
Praise the
you.
Lord.
We know that God knows the number of our days and she has purpose, and this wisdom is meant to go forward. So we're excited to share that journey, and we look forward to having you back to share some more. So, yeah,
Sounds great.
thank you. Thank you. So, as we close, listeners, I just really encourage you, what has hit your heart in this? As you've heard this story today, what hits for you? Where is God pricking your heart? Where have you accepted a box? Where have you put God in a box? Either for yourself, for your children, for your health, in any aspect that you've put him in a box, ask him. Ask him what he wants you to know about that. And invite him in. You will be amazed at what he will teach and show you just right where you are if you let him in and don't hold him to that box. And it's so important. I just encourage you, I want to reiterate that we must be advocates. We must be a voice for ourselves, for our families, taking a spirit, soul, and body approach to health and healing. So I really encourage you in that. This is a time that God is moving, and it's time to take back territory in what God has given his people to move forward fearless and free, spirit, soul, and body. whatever He's called you to do, we are praying for you. Remember, we do have the prayer guide. So if you haven't subscribed for the podcast, you can do that through my website. And we have a free prayer and reflection guide for every episode. It's just some tools to help you pause and process your own heart and your own emotions and what God might be speaking to you. So check those out. Sign up for that if you haven't. And we always close in prayer. And Elizabeth, would you just pray for people, however you feel led, people that are walking through a journey like yours? Would you just pray over inviting the Lord to meet them in that?
Absolutely. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to share what you've done through the friendship between Dana and myself, the work that you've done through the physicians, through my own family, through all the trials that you have led us to walk on that we really didn't want, but that we accept, and we know this is our temporary home and that we are being conditioned for our eternal home. Thank you, Lord, for providing peace, comfort, and the knowledge that you are walking with us, even though we might not physically feel it. We invite you to be in our hearts and to really show your love, your mercy, and your care for us, because we know that everything in this world that is not good is not from you, it's from the devil. And we pray that you protect us and guide us through each day as a renewed day. And I thank you for this friendship, and I thank you that I'm able to speak my truth to anybody that needs to hear this. And I pray it does touch somebody and let them know that they are not alone and that you're with us at all times. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fearless and Free Spirit, Soul, Body with host Dana Grindal. Please go to fearlessandfreecommunity.com to access bonus podcast content. To connect with Dana, go to danagrindal.com. Thanks for joining us.